Wow, I don't know about everyone else here, but I can really feel the power radiating off all the powerful women in the room. Uh, Hi, I'm Simone, she, her, they, them pronouns, and today I'll be introducing our speaker, Cheyenne Sundance. And as a fellow farmer, I gotta say, like, lots of admiration for you, Cheyenne. So Cheyenne Sundance, the owner / executive director of Sundance Harvest and a full-time farmer of three location farms spanning 3 acres across southwestern Ontario. Her CSA is produced by over 20 farmers who she directly and closely mentors. Cheyenne Sundance started her farm in 2019 due to a lack of awareness of fair pay and discussion on a diversity of concerns of equality in agriculture from the worker, youth, Black, and women's lens. Cheyenne Sundance is the inaugural president of the National Farmers Union Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Caucus. She has also successfully started up the Sundance Harvest Black Business and Farm Sister Incubator Program and its sister, which is fully subsidized for new Black farmers. Cheyenne has no previous farming or educational experience as she left high school. Cheyenne has never worked on a farm before starting Sundance Harvest at 22. She has true working class roots and a deep interest in workers' rights, community, land trusts, and the idea of the commons for the betterment of all. Welcome Cheyenne Sundance to the stage. Thank you all. Where's your slideshow?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Maybe, that's okay. Maybe for the slideshow, we can turn the lights a bit so then the visual can be more easier on the eyes for everyone. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. While we get this started, just moved to Kitchener. I got a new apartment, my very first apartment in my entire life. So big deal for me. But yeah, the drive was long, but the drive was nice. I got to see many fields and many cows grazing. And I was like, oh, those moo seem so happy. And I thought about how I'm doing ranching next year, which is very funny. But we just got another acre officially. So we are at 4 acres now from the time I didn't update the bio. So if you can't hear me very well, there's 3 seats up front if you'd like more accessibility with your hearing. And the way I like to do these workshops is mainly that I like to have a conversation. So if you feel shy about raising your hand, don't, because you're all a part of the workshop. You're all part of the workshop because if you have a question, I bet you 2 other people have that question, or maybe 10, or maybe 20, or maybe more. And it's important to ask the questions. And I find it very fun. I don't like talking for long periods without questions. So you can ask me whatever you want, but we're going to begin. So I'm going to be talking about Sundance Harvest today, kind of how it got started, a bit about the equity piece, and a bit about like, why am I doing this? Because it's a bit all silly, but it still works. So is there a clicker I can use for the next one? Sorry. So this is some of my greens, and that's some of my core staff. So Sundance Harvest started in 2019. How many of you have heard about Sundance Harvest? I don't have to be like, no, okay, oh my God, 3 or 4. So I just came back from 2 workshops, one in Montreal, one in Ottawa, back to back. And it was really funny because everyone was like, yeah, we all know Sundance because of that area. But it's nice for people not knowing who Sundance Harvest is, so I can get a fresh perspective on like, am I doing what I think I'm doing, or is it actually not that good of an idea? But regardless, so Sundance Harvest is now a 4-acre farm, 3 locations, and really what it is a year-round farm. It's actually a farm. I have chickens, I run chickens, I do eggs, we do mushrooms, we do beehives, we have 5, we do fruits, we do vegetables, and all of that jazz. So we have 3 locations, one in Guelph at St. Ignatius Farm. Some of you may have heard it. I see some nods here. Cool, cool, cool. We do chickens there. So I have my chickens, my laying chickens, and then I do corn. I seed save. So I basically keep breeding out varieties of seed that could be lost. So I do that there as well. I do squash. And then at my other locations, we have one near Paladin, closer to Bolton, and we do our wholesale production because we move about 600 units of kale or collards a week wholesale to the Cambridge Food Bank this year as one of our new vendors, and then other vendors. And then Our main central location is like the party location, because that's where like everyone is always at. I call it party location because we have 3 kittens too, but it's it's in Downsview Park, which is in North York. It's an 1.5 acres, and that's where we run our incubator farm program. And that's where all of my staff for the sites have to be trained there, because we have the most infrastructure, such as you can probably see behind there, but we have 2 heated greenhouses, 2,000 square feet. We have 3 unheated tunnels. We now, next week, we have an automated mushroom chamber in a cute little building on wheels. So we have all that cool stuff. And really, Sundance Harvest, what the focus is fair labor. We pay $24 an hour, paid vacation for 1 week, paid sick days 5 days a year, and climate crisis days when there's a heat wave, my staff do not work. I think the key thing here is like, that's not anything to clap about. I just redistribute all the profit from my business. So with that being said, I started Sundance Harvest when I was, I think it was like 22. I'm like turning 26 soon, but I started in 2019. I didn't have any experience. If you have any questions about like, why did you do that or all that stuff, you can raise your hand. If you don't, that's cool. But I started it, and I started it with 800 square feet and half of 1 greenhouse, because I didn't have any money to like buy land, and both of my parents are working class, and I come from a household with like severe addiction, so I didn't really have any opportunity to get a loan because I had no credit. I didn't have any opportunity to ask family to farm on their land because there was no family that had land. So I basically leased my locations, and I still lease my locations, and it's just this winter that I have the ability to mortgage a piece of land finally and put that into community land trust. But they don't have to clap for everything. I appreciate that, but I want to get through this. So half of 1 greenhouse, I started 800 square feet. About 1 acre is about 40,000 square feet. So now we're at 4, and that's in 3 years. And the reason I kind of got there is because these people are my staff, and everyone at Sundance Harvest is like super dedicated to the vision, and it makes me cry sometimes. But when I started Sundance Harvest, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. They're like, it's okay, we will figure it out. And then we had a successful season. We have 100-person CSA plus. We do 4 markets a week. We do cut flowers. We do literally everything, which is kind of funny. But we're the only farm in Southwestern Ontario that pays entry level and redistributes the profit in a way that's, in my opinion, just. Any surplus profit, the way we work out our labor, and people can take this as they will, is it's actually hard work. Like, people don't go la 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 anti-capitalist wonderland, even though that'd be cool, but it's not, because people have to pay their bills, such as the staff. So if they're harvesting kale, they should be harvesting kale 1 kale per 30 seconds. And what they do is they have quota sheets. So they write, I harvested X amount of kale in an hour. If they do over the normal quota, they get a raise that year, and they use those sheets to leverage that their labor made money. So then they see our profit lines because they have access to all our financials. And the reason I'm talking about this is not because business is fun, it's not, but it's because this is how Sundance Harvest runs. So whenever someone tries to work at Sundance Harvest, they're like, this is hard work. But at the end of the year, they can get $30 an hour if they wanted to, if they show that they can make the profits for the business, because that's their money that they deserve. So really, Sundance Harvest started, I leased land, I keep leasing land, I keep expanding, I have coyote energy, I nip, and then I make a little furrow and I live in it. Next slide. Okay, so I incorporated Sundance Harvest myself, and then I incorporated all these 3 last month, but they've basically been operating unincorporated for a while. So we have 3 kind of big kahunas. So the first one is Sundance Harvest, where we do chickens, we do greens, my staff work there. And then the next is the market, where the CSA, which is Community Supported Agriculture, is like a produce box, where the public, they buy our produce box from. That's the market. So it's like also like an online grocery store kind of deal. And then we also have something called the Sundance Commons, which is a registered nonprofit, and that actually like gets leases. And we work with like rematriating land, and we also work with like 100-year leases. Like, it's pretty cool. If you heard of the Agrarian Trust or Agrarian Commons, that's exactly what we're doing, like to the T. They're really nice. I was hanging out with some people in the Catskills and riding horses, and I was like, this is so cool. You guys like have 99 years, you can farm. Yeah, so you should check that out. The Sundance Commons also runs their farmer incubator program. So next year it's officially 100% subsidized for those who are not really like of the demographic who are the most privileged in agriculture. And basically the incubator program is the biggest thing of Sundance Harvest lately. Everyone kind of likes that. And I like it because it's a program that people who want to have an actual career, because I can tell you what I know, but I can't tell you what I don't know. And I don't know many things, but I do know what I'm going to tell you today. So not everything I do is right, but everything that I do is something that I do. So with the incubator program, what it is they grow vegetables. They grow three types of crops. So zucchini, tomatoes, green onions, and they sell at minimum 100 units a week at a wholesale rate. And then they get land at no cost. They get compost, they get seeds, they get my greenhouse space, they get irrigation fitting, they get walk-in cooler, they get marketing, they get promoting, they get accounting, they get everything under the sun. And that has never existed in Ontario because I looked it up for the last year. So what that does is they directly grow vegetables that go into our market. So every single thing is connected under Sundance. So the commons, the farmers, they grow for the market. Sundance Harvest, my farm, grows for the market. And then the money is circulated. In this way, it's more transparent as well. And the people who are in the incubator program, if you want to go on the website, you can see their profiles. But they all are going to have jobs from this, like part-time to full-time jobs. And it's pretty wild considering like now they're all friends and they all kiki and hang out. Next slide. So this is a bit of like the financials. This is only the financials for like just the like CSA, but I think we can share this later so you guys can read it. It's too small. Next slide. So basically, again, the market farming incubator program this year, because I wasn't like registered like as a incubator properly, I did a kind of a pilot with a Black business incubator because we had a lot of like cool cats who are from Uganda who wanted to grow up corn. And I was like, that's interesting. So then I fundraised like $25,000 to cover like the bulk of our incubators, which is pretty nice. And one of our staff members, Eaton, he's from Huron, Essex region, and he's Indigenous. His uncle is Isaac Crosby. Some of you may know Isaac Crosby. He used to work at Evergreen Brickworks as a seed keeper. So cool. Anyway, so Aiden's actually going to be kind of in this program in a way because he's going to be teaching the Indigenous land maturation, Indigenous land seed stewardship next year. So really being a nonprofit for Sundance Commons allows us to write grants to then pay our staff members to actually like have another income, which is this. Next slide. So what are the backgrounds and aspirations of the program participants? So many of the people who are into the market incubator farmer thing, the key thing is they want to pay their bills. I know capitalism sucks, it does. I think what I can do is do the least harm possible and create an alternate food system as best I can that can scale. And when I say scale, I know agriculture is bad, but scaling is important if you want to pay people a living wage. I could never, ever pay someone $24 an hour if I was just at half an acre doing everything by hand. If I was broad forking the earth, harvesting carrots, I'd have to pay myself $2.75 probably for that. But if I have a walk behind tractor, which I just bought a couple days ago, no crap for that. My line of credit shot. But if I have a walk behind tractor, like I just got on my line of credit, it allows me then to pay people a fair wage because their labor is not being used inefficiently. And me trying to say this, and it's really hard for me to say this from a lens of someone who's like, I really want to turn on the system, to understanding I can't do that tomorrow, but what I can do tomorrow is try to create the best system possible. And then fight as much as I can politically, which is why I'm the inaugural president of the National Farmers Union BIPOC Caucus. And so I can go to Parliament this November and go, my big mouth. So the backgrounds of the backgrounds of people, a lot of people, again, haven't ever farmed before. Every single person in the incubator farmer, except for one, has never farmed before. They get mentored by me every single week. The key aspirations is to have a good life, to have community, and to work together. It's so funny to see these strangers all of a sudden have their own like little chat group and go and chat together all the time, hang out with each other outside, help each other harvest crops without me even doing anything. I think by nature, we all want to be in community and be together. So the aspirations is to not be alone, and to not be alone, but also to not have to sacrifice buying bread or buying TTC tokens, right? And that's important, right? So really my experience mentoring them was fairly easy, as long as they're understanding what they want to do. And we kind of have like a stress test. So like they kind of have to harvest with us, and obviously we pay them. And I usually have to know the participants for a couple of years to really feel like I'll get along with them, because interpersonal skills is something that I'm working on turning 26, but also like sometimes you just don't jive with people, and that's okay. And because this is a very community element, it's quite important to us that the people in the program kind of understand what we're doing, and what we're trying to do is create fair labor and good jobs, and obviously like treat the environment well, but create an alternate food system as best as possible so everyone can make what my staff are making. Next slide. Yes, you have a question.
I do have a question. How is Sundance incorporated? Are you guys a co-op?
Yeah. So the question is, how is Sundance incorporated? So are you talking about Sundance Harvest, Sundance Market, or Sundance Commons?
Yes, like as a whole.
Okay, as a whole. So Sundance Harvest is, all of them are incorporated. Incorporated basically means you're like registered. So we have Sundance Harvest and Sundance Market as an incorporated for-profit. And then Sundance Commons is incorporated as a nonprofit. We are not a cooperative for the sole reason that we don't have anyone that wants to be a cooperative. We already voted. My staff have no interest. And I can see why. A lot of liability. I do so much admin work, and I don't think they want to do that. And also, we have an insane amount of labor back end to do. We have to do, again, 100% CSA, 4 markets a week, and so much more stuff. Not everyone wants to be involved with that. And really with the cooperatives, they used to do a lot of cooperative researching. You kind of have to have everyone on the same board, right? The hierarchy is way more heightened in a normal experience. Obviously, in a cooperative, it's a bit more lessened. So that's what we have now. I think it works. Also, when I think about like, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, naturally there's always, a few people that one person likes to summarize and, lead, and one person's like a scribe. They like to take minutes and notes and document and make sure the processes are going right. Another person's visual. They like to do graphics. They like to think big picture. So with Sundance Harvest, we're not a cooperative, mainly because we don't have all those people who want to be that. And we're noticing more and more people want to be independent, but within the community. So our incubator farmers really like the fact that they can make a wholesale price on tomatoes, which, for example, Nico, he is growing heirloom tomatoes in one of our greenhouses, and he charges us $2 a pound for it, which is really, really good, because then we can mark that up to 4. And he can produce 150 pounds a week, 200 pounds a week. And then, of course, he's doing basil and he's doing other crops as well. So then he can make a decent income. So most people are very comfortable. And I think maybe in the future, there'll be a cooperative. I don't know. Yeah, what's up? Oh, okay. I'm trying to cap my staff because I'm not good at managing, mainly because I end up becoming friends with my staff, and it's not a good balance. So 3, and they're all my age. So it's very fun. We have Maya, who's coming back for, this is her, she's been here maybe over 2 years, maybe a year and a half. Aiden, who's coming back again. Erin is not coming back because she's in school, but it's okay. I think she's gonna come back after school. And then I told her because she's gonna bark. And then Laura is our new staff member, who's the most experienced, which is key because I don't know how to do a lot of the things that she does, which is you need skills. To have a good staff, you need at least some skills. The skills can be learned, but some things like riding a large tractor or, slaughtering and butchering, that I can't figure it out from the sky. So that's really key. So basically, this is kind of the advertising we do for our incubator program. I really try to make it very clear to everyone what we kind of do. Next slide. And again, if you have any questions, next slide, they can see that later. I realize it's so tiny in my little writings. How can local funders and economic development agencies best support young entrepreneurs and farmers in achieving their goals? What a mouthful. So that, so it's just honestly asking. I think the key thing here is I mentor many people. I mentor 21 right now, farmers, and not just in my incubator, but outside. The key thing is it viable? And it's fun to dream. I love to dream and not go to work, but some things are not viable. And if they have for example, a background of community. So they have experience working with community, they've experienced communicating with others, they have strong interpersonal skills, they understand what they're getting into, things like that. I think, local funders and economic development agencies can easily support them because they're already based in an understanding of how to work well with others. And to work well with the environment and plants, you have to work well with others. No one can be a lone coyote. A coyote goes in a pack. So that's the kind of key thing I bring up to people I mentor. I'm like, you can never do it all alone. I don't know that. I can't subtract very well. So I have an accountant. So in some ways, my accountant in the funniest ways is a part of my coyote pack. So what I kind of think about. But the really key thing is going to where they are. Sometimes when I get local funders like saying, we should have a meeting, come to the office. I'm like, I'm not going, I'm harvesting radish. So the best thing is when they come to my field or like, I'm harvesting eggs and they talk to me. So that's like a key thing. And then also infrastructure. The wildest thing is why our incubator program is constantly at capacity with 32 people waiting right now to get into it. Because infrastructure is so expensive. A greenhouse in itself, and I lease both of my greenhouses long-term. That greenhouse I have, one of them costs $60,000 because it has automatic vents, it has propane, it has all that hooked up. Who can afford that? Not me. You'd have to have some really serious dough to do that. So infrastructure is the key thing. But again, do we all need a greenhouse? Usually not, unless we're all growing heirloom tomatoes. What if we're all just need some seedling space for spring? We can all share one greenhouse. So again, that's where the cooperative nature really comes in with Sundance Harvest. One of our greenhouses is strictly seedling house because we don't all need it. We don't all need 2,000 square feet if we're just growing, 5,000 square feet of crop. Next slide. So this is Maya. She's so cool. Maya is like the longest staff member here, and happy to say all my staff, except for my new one, is starting their own farms this year. Maya's farm is called Today Only, and she's incubating at Sundance Harvest. All my staff usually want to start their own farms, so then I guide them along, and I'm really proud of her. I saw her today. Aside from that, we practice sociocracy. Has anyone here heard of sociocracy before? Oh yeah, you good. That's good. So sociocracy is basically like, have you ever been in a meeting or lived in a household with roommates and they're like, hey, let's have a meeting. And then you sit down like, what pasta sauce do we buy? Does that matter to someone who doesn't eat pasta? No. So that's kind of the way I describe sociocracy, is that at my farm, let's say we have 12 incubators right now, 12 disciples. We have 12 incubators. We have 12 incubators, and some of us don't do cut flowers. So why do I get to decide what Carrie does with her dahlias? Why do I decide what kind of netting Carrie needs for her zinnias? So sociocracy is basically understanding that you need effectiveness to make a lot of decisions. And I like to use something called circularchy, which many societies have used so long ago. And today, it's basically like, who is most affected by this decision? They should govern that decision. We should not have this entire group, if 5 of us do cut flowers, make a decision about when do we harvest the dahlia tubers. It doesn't matter to me if I'm doing cattle. So circularchy is basically allowing independence within subgroups. It's commonly called caucuses or advisory committees. You probably heard those terms. But we have sociocracy at our farm. Each of our staff have a key thing. Laura is doing seedlings. Aiden's doing the mushroom production. Maya's doing vegetables and markets. So if they want to make a key decision, like Maya's like, well, I need to figure out what kind of tent to get for the Sororan market. I shouldn't make the decision. She should. She should make it with her staff who are doing the market. So we basically exercise the idea of independence really found in cooperatives through this. And that allows our staff to have more freedom and choice. Next slide. And again, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I'm here. So yeah, I'm going to request that this slide be sent to you because I want to write a bit more about sociocracy. There's a few things. Next slide. Things like fair leadership, governance by consent, ensuring that there's proper timelines and that everyone who's going to be involved or affected again has a decision. But I don't need to make a decision for everyone because I'm not affected by what everyone's doing. Next slide. So funding streams is something that I want to talk about because diversity in agriculture obviously is a thing, but you need to buy things sometimes to start a farm like I did. Next slide. But that's Nico in that previous slide. Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun there, didn't I? We can go back. There we go. Okay. So next, Nico. Nico's growing 2,000 tomatoes this year. And I think he's gonna pass out because he's been working every day this week. But he's not my staff, so I can't really tell him what to do. But so yeah, Nico is growing in one of our greenhouses. He's growing 2,000 tomatoes, which is a bit much. And then he's growing basil. So he's basically producing all of our tomatoes. And this is him at 8:50 p.m. like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. He's looking at his tomatoes with such disdain. He's like, I hate this Cheyenne. But they look so good. And he planted most of them and they started flowering. So we're gonna have a harvest in 2 weeks. Next slide. I know greenhouses rock. I love them, except for the propane. Boo emissions. So basically how I started Sundance Harvest, I get this question a lot, is I started with 800 square feet. I got one grant for $5,000. So I had no money. So I never had a job before. And my work I had before, I wasn't allowed to put on my resume. So basically I started very small. I started in the winter time. I grew spinach and greens. I sold that to Dufferin Grove Farmers Market because there was no saturation of other farmers in that market. I like being a big shark in a little pond. I can't compete very well. I'm not very competitive. I usually quit very fast. So I didn't start in the summertime when all the other farmers were beautiful with their collards and chard and onions, when I would be like, oh, I'm just a little farmer. I got 2 crops. So instead I decided to start off, you know, in wintertime when no one was doing anything and I was going to be the star of the show with my spinach. Well, that sucked because I got aphids and I lost half of my crop. But guess what? It didn't hurt because I was in the wintertime. I could still do microgreens. I could still do so many different things. And my failure in my first year was so like blunted by the fact that like I didn't have to fail with a lot of people watching, but also it was wintertime. And yes.
I actually do really want to know why you started farming.
Oh, I see nods. You want to know too. You do. Okay. Oh, yeah. Why did you start farming? That's the question. Because I couldn't get a job. But no, I don't know how appropriate it is to say, but yeah, most people read my blog may know this, or the docuseries that were done by me. So I basically started because I couldn't get a job, because when I was a teenager, I was a prostitute, and it was really difficult to get a job because I couldn't put that on the resume. So when I got free and I left, I had to recalibrate into society for a while. And it took me about 1 year to be like, whoa, you have a phone bill, you pay taxes, you do all this stuff. And then I figured it out, and I really decided, okay, I couldn't go to school because I loved high school. I obviously was too busy doing something else during high school. I couldn't really do math very well. I had no attention span, and I said, why don't I just go to a blueberry farm in BC? And I did that. So when I was 18 years old, I quit for a bit, and then I went to Cuba first, to Vinales, Cuba, which most people know because that was like the big thing they write about. And then after that, I was still in the game, and I didn't leave yet. When I was 20, I eventually could get out and I left. And then I decided I'm going to go to BC to Kelowna, and I'm going to hitchhike from Kelowna all the way to the border, Osoyoos. And I did that, and I saw all these blueberry farms. I ate blueberries, and I was very bad at my job picking. And I decided maybe I want a slower pace of life. Maybe I want to decide what I want to do. And I saw a bunch of market farmers who were doing basically what I'm doing now. And I was like, hey, maybe I could do that. And they're like, I don't know, maybe you can. And then I ended up, and then I was like, okay, do it. So then I basically left BC. I had a really good partner at the time who helped me, like, you know, get back into society. It was really beautiful. And he's like, you should start a farm. I believe in you. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I basically, where I am now at 70 Canuck Avenue, I like staked it out for like a week to see who was in the greenhouse. And I saw a golf cart, and I said, that's not plants. So I called the park, because Downsview Park is like a park proper. And I was like, in my most adult voice, hello, who's using greenhouse 1? And I sound like the Monopoly man, but they were like, no one. They're like, no one's using it. And I was like, oh, cool. Can I lease it? They're like, well, who are you? And I was like, Cheyenne. And basically, I didn't meet the property manager for like months because I was so scared he was going to see me. And I looked like a kid. He'd be like, I'm not leasing to you, because they own like the most land or whatever. They own like the land, the sea, and towers on and all that stuff. So I was like, I'm not playing a game with him. So then I got the lease before he met me. When I said lease. But then I think they like me because they put me in their newsletter. But I'm not very good at business. So that's kind of how I started. And then I went to the library a lot because I couldn't afford books at the time. Because again, I had no job. So then I took a lot of library books and I asked a lot of questions. And I was that really annoying person at the farmer's market and be like, hey, can I come to your farm? Hey, can I ask you a question? And then I made some friends and they're like, yeah, you can ask this question. So that's how I started. But yeah, you can go to the next slide. This doesn't really talk about anything else I just said because I just said everything. So an example of, if someone wants to talk about diversity in agriculture, getting started is really hard. Community bonds is something that people can do. This is in Guelph, for example. It's basically when a community puts an investment in and they get investment back at a low return rate, but still like some interest. So if anyone's interested, I would look at community bonds because that's a very fair way to start up any bigger project. Next slide. I like to just include that. Go in another one because this is a whole boring thing. So this is me and my friend Alex. I do a lot of field research with other farmers of color. I went to Michigan and I look happy because he has a nice crop in there, very nice brassica crop. And does anyone have any key questions yet so far? Because I'm going to get a bit into diversity in agriculture and how the CSA format really helped me. Okay. Okay, so basically with a CSA, that's kind of how I started. And being in agriculture, obviously being someone like me, I couldn't go to the bank, so I couldn't get any loans. So I initially started with, again, as most of you know, I grew greens, I grew microgreens, I grew spinach, I grew lettuce. When half of my crop was eaten by aphids, I was like, oh, I gotta do something better. So I decided to then have a small CSA, and that's basically community supported agriculture. So people paid up front. I only had like 20 people. And then with those 20 people, I built a strong customer base with some of them. I think 10 of the 20 are still with me today, which is really wild. So I was so bad my first year. And they're like, you're great, Cheyenne. And I was like, oh, really? So the CSA allowed me to basically have a community within my customers, which is very bizarre because I never heard of that before, but that worked quite well. Some of the considerations were like, there's really strict boundaries. So what I've been starting to do is do a market style pickup. So that allows a lot of our CSA customers, and like I would say 50 of them are basically 50 of them are BIPOC, like 50%. So they bring their children to the farm and they pick up their vegetables, and their children like run around and they say, wow, so nice, and all of that stuff. And that really allowed me to like have the younger generation like physically see what I'm doing. It can be a lot to like sit in a chair if you're 8 and like hear me talk and drone on, and that's not very fun, but to like touch stuff and to like eat a cherry tomato and to run around and to fall in the mud, to throw up hay, that's very fun. So the CSA allowed me to have my customers not just like go to the store and be like, oh, Sundance harvest tomatoes, put that in the box and go home and make a frittata. But instead they can come to the farm and be like, oh, wow, I can touch things, I can harvest, I can jump, and they can bring their children along too. Next slide. So some of the considerations again for me was that again, diversity in ag, I didn't have anyone to train me. So with having a CSA, it kind of allowed me to like take a pace because I did break it up into seasons. And mentorship was the key thing that I wish I had. If any of you follow me on social media, you know how stubborn I am. I'm very stubborn. I'm a triple Aries. Yes, all of it. I'm like the worst and sometimes the best, but mainly the worst to deal with at the farm because I'm very, very, very intense and type A. And having a CSA allowed me to really focus. Like I focus on those 10 weeks and then I have a break. But I wish I had a mentor, because if I had a mentor, I would have made hopefully like only like 40% of the mistakes I did, but I didn't have anyone that represented what I wanted. And a lot of people said, try and just work at a farm. I didn't want to work at a farm that didn't do what I want to do, because why would I learn from someone who didn't show me what I want to do? That's kind of bizarre. So I decided to not do that. And that's why we have the incubator program now. Next one. Okay. So this is kind of like me. But the idea with Sundance Harvest, the key thing here is like, yeah, we grow cool vegetables and we have fun social media. And sometimes I put stickers on my face in the market and I run around. But the idea is we want to create a full diet CSA. So a full diet box completely grown by people who are learning to farm. And you need infrastructure because you cannot buy a $60,000 greenhouse your first year unless you're, Mr. Moneybags or Mrs. Moneybags. You can't. So the idea is I want to scale up and have a cooperative farming model that maybe isn't a registered cooperative, but as close as possible to it and allow people to all grow together. They grow 3 crops, they grow 3 crops, they grow 2, but we all put in one box and we all can, reap the benefits. Next slide. So this is again what the kind of like what we break it into. And again, we break it into this because I don't like the model of like, oh, I'm tilling the fields at 4 a.m. I got no life. I got the hay in the summer. Like all of that stuff is great, but like I want to party and have a good time. And I think the younger generation doesn't want to be able to like have no social life and farm. I think you can have a social life because I do. And the idea here, well, I want to have a fun time. The idea here is we break up our CSA 10-week blocks in a week we have off. So that allows everyone to have a break. We also have, for example, we work with a lot of cool cats like Asima Circles who do rematriation in a park called Hyde Park in Toronto. And they're doing like a drumming circle in the greenhouse for seed planting because they grow sacred medicines in our greenhouses. So we can allow activities like drumming and, like all this cool stuff, seed keeping to happen on the off time. So really the weeks apart from when we have to hustle and harvest and sell, we can allow for rest and restoring ourselves and learning with others. Next slide, we're coming to the end. So we do a lot of community events, mainly because when I started farming, so long ago, I really wanted to see someone who did this, but I looked high and low, side to side, and I couldn't find anyone. I couldn't, and it sucked because it was like, oh, this is going to be really hard, and it was. But now at these events we have, people can literally come and like talk to us. They can meet friends, they can meet Maya, they can meet Aiden, they can like have natural dyeing, what Maya does. I don't know what that means, but she likes to do that. And then we have a maize harvest. They can make corn husk dolls with us, and I really like that. So diversity in agriculture looks like 1, community, 2, how do you make that community? And 3, share infrastructure, because yeah, we live under capitalism, it sucks, but I can create an alternative food system the best I can. Yes, I might not change the entire world, but I can still change a community, and that can still change another community as I pass it on. So we're going to go to question and answer, because I feel like that's more fun, and I can go off the cuff. You can keep going, it's more fun to see what happens. So you'll see this slide later. I wrote so much because I want people to read, so we can just keep going. Let's go to the fun slide. Keep going. That's good. So I like to stop on this slide and the next slide to ask and answer questions. Does anyone have any questions for me? I really enjoy doing workshops with no notes and slowly. Yes. Oh yeah. So here's the 411. So we do, if you're in a newsletter, then you can visit. But we do an open house the last Saturday of every month, not this month because I want to ride horses in Virginia. So not this month, but next month. And then we have a seedling sale April 15th to June 15th. And we do greens first, perennials, and then hot crops. So you can visit whenever open house is. All of our staff are there and all of the incubator farmers are there and they love to chat. Next question. Yes.
How did you start like marketing yourself and like getting those initial CSA members?
Yeah, so how did I start marketing myself and getting those initial CSA members? So the first thing I did is I tried to make friends, and it's very hard. It was very hard for me because I didn't really ever have a friend until 19 and I really got out of the game. So I had to go to the farmer's market and say, hi, my name is Cheyenne. I'm going to start a farm. And most of the time we're like, okay. But then some people, usually women, were like, wow, that's very interesting. Tell me more. And I was like, I like this divine feminine energy. I will. And then basically through other people you build a relationship with, they'll share what you're doing. And that's kind of what happened with me. But also like, be you. The coolest thing about Sundance Harvest is I don't operate on any farm scale that's like actually making a difference with food security. I don't provide food security. I can't grow potatoes at a rate that costs, for the actual pound, 2 cents a pound. I can never produce that. That's like tractor level. That's like thousands and thousands of acres. That's like, you know, the savings that migrant workers can provide a farm. I don't have access to any of those things. I operate in a totally different realm. My whole thing is there's no way possible I can grow potatoes that cheaply. And that's okay. That's not my place in the food system. My place is to create jobs and opportunities and literally an incubator for 12 farmers a year to be like, maybe I want to do this, and maybe I'll get a tractor, and maybe I'll take up grain, or maybe I'll take up cash cropping in 5 years, you know? So they have a choice. So I guess I'm off your question, but to answer your question for the marketing and kind of getting people to know, you want to be like as open and honest about who you are. I'm like such a chaotic good on my Instagram. If I'm having a little puppet theater house party, I post about that. My customers are like, wow, that's not kale, but that's interesting. And you're operating in a totally different realm, like a totally different dimension, like the labyrinth. You're like, where am I? And you don't know where you are, but you're not in industrial agriculture because you'll never be providing food security at the scale that literally calories can provide. Potatoes are calories, rice is calories, meat is calories, you know, all of that stuff. Me providing radishes at a 500 units a week, that's not food security because that's not really that dense or culturally relevant food oftentimes. So yeah, I basically like just market myself how I want to market myself. I talk to people, I try to build relationships, and then I try to humble myself because like I'm only 25 and I don't know a lot, but I know what I know, and I just try to share that as best as I can. And I make a lot of mistakes and I always post about it. So that's kind of what I do. Yeah. Over there, yellow sweater.
What are you doing with your infrastructure, like your water systems? You spoke to us a year ago at Fleming, just before you were about Speaker Black Futures Month.
Oh, yeah.
Water free.
That was
All the
stressful.
rural folks at Fleming were really feeling you.
Oh,
So how are you solving these big problems?
wow. That's a while ago. Yeah, so what am I doing about water and my structures? So we have an underground water system now. So not a lot of pipes bursting because no one's stepping on it with a wheelbarrow or stepping on it with their foot. And we do automated irrigation system with a rainbird timer in zones of 10. So we basically have different zones and they go on it each time. PSI is now at 12. So it's less pressure in the actual tubing. Overall, we don't hand water anything because of the scale we're at. We're pretty big in terms of the market farming scale. Thank you. Yay. Over there. Oh. Yeah. So our chickens, the questions about the chickens. So we have red sex links. We have, because there's a quota system for eggs, we only have 100. Also because like I want a life this year and this is our first year doing chickens. So I can't like do meat birds and eggs. I was like, that's too stressful for Cheyenne. So I'm doing 100 birds for eggs. And we basically, it's a really small scale just to see if we like it. The cool thing is if we wanted to, our incubators could do also 100 birds. So technically each person who is at a different site, as they expand, they could do eggs as well. And that's the only way we can scale egg productions to get, you know, like 1,000 dozens of eggs a week. Because I individually can't do 1,000 laying birds. I don't have quota. And quota is something that you need to buy to do eggs on a larger scale. Or sometimes I think you marry into it, but I don't want to marry Matthew or David or Paul. So that's just me. I like my boys to paint nails. What am I going to say? So the key thing though with meat birds is you can do 3,000 meat birds a year. We might do that next year, but I want a ranch really bad. So I have to think about it. Some of our staff want to do livestock, so I might get them to be trained out. But currently right now I'm being mentored by Chris Newman from Sylvan Aqua Farms, who's Piscaway. And he is in Virginia. So I go to pop into Virginia, learn a bit, pop out. But yeah. Hello, over there.
Can you share more about Sundance Commons and how you structure it? You mentioned like 100-year leases.
Yeah, cool. So Sundance Commons is like the brainchild of myself and my best friend forever, John Gagnon, which is a very French Northern Quebec name. He's really cool and he knows so much about community land trust. And this summer we went to 18 different farms across Canada and in the States, all the way like super south to like south of Virginia. And we learned about community land trust. And basically what it is, it's a way to hold land, kind of like an easement, but it's different because you can actually hold land for 99 years on a ground lease. So if a community land trust, again, owns, because like it's not their land, but like I'm going to use like in that way, you can do a few things. The Agrarian Trust is the best example. You should look them up. They rematriate lands to tribes that are indigenous to the area that the land is situated on. So that's the key thing that they do. They also take land called faith lands, and they create land back with that too, while working with local tribes as well in America. Mainly, I've seen this a lot in the Catskills region and Virginia, because I was just there. But with the community land trust, my idea is there's no community land trust designation in Canada. And in America, you have a special clause under the nonprofit code, but in Canada, we don't have that. I'm pushing a petition that went to the House of Commons from one of the constituents in BC. Basically, he was like, I want community land trust to be designated. And there's this big petition to send it. And I kind of pushed that with the National Farmers Union. So we don't have any designation. So if I start a community land trust, it's not really community land trust, it's just a nonprofit because there's no designation. And if someone wants to donate land to community land trust to keep it, always out of the real estate market, always, away from being developed, from taken from like the actual earth and put into concrete, there's no tax donation, like receipt I can give them. With the easement, there is a receipt, but there's no designation for community land trust in the nonprofit sector in Canada. So a lot of people don't want to donate to a community land trust organization because they can't get a receipt. So that's the key thing. And so Sundance Commons is working to be the first community land trust to scale in Ontario, which is really cool. So we wrote the bylaws last night at like 9 p.m. So that's kind of the focus. And again, community land trust is to hold the land to stop it from being developed. And a lot of it's related to farming in America, but in Canada, the Parkland Community Land Trust, they save rooming houses from being developed, and they keep land and they can allow people to have long-term tenancy. So the whole thing is to keep it out of the real estate market, to stop being speculative on. And once it's in a trust, you cannot sell it, which I like a lot. So you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. But I'm not that brainy, so I'm trying my best. Any other questions? Yeah, what's up?
For you affected by Cuba because they support their small farmers.
Yeah, I was really affected by Cuba when I was in my little socialist little quip time. I was affected by many things in Cuba, and I really did like vineyards because they had lots of tobacco, and then oftentimes people would grow one crop only because it made more sense to scale efficiently. I'm going to grow, let's say I'm going to grow Kawartha root. I'm going to get large scale equipment to do it very efficiently. I'm not going to do diversified CSA farms. That makes no sense. And then they would grow and they say, what are you growing, neighbor? Oh, that's interesting. I'm growing collards. Oh, I'm growing Kawartha. We should sell together. Okay. And that happened a lot because it made more sense to invest in really good equipment for that one crop and then do it efficiently and then just work together. So I saw a lot of that, which was really interesting. And most of, if some of you don't know, Cuba really turned to organic agriculture after the fall of the Soviet Union because they couldn't get petroleum and other chemical fertilizers that were like synthetic. Obviously, everything's a chemical, air, water, but they couldn't get normal fertilizers they could. And obviously they had to stick to more smaller scale agriculture. So it was really interesting to be there. To be honest, I was there for like less than a year, like very, very short time. And I went back and forth because I couldn't get like a visa or whatever. So yeah. Next slide. Then there's the next question.
Obviously you have like a very unique business model. I'm wondering if you ever face like pushback from business leaders or funders or
Oh, yeah. So the question is, have you ever faced pushback from funders and stuff? I have no funders. I like that way. So basically we generate all the capital ourselves. If I had any funders, I feel like I wouldn't be allowed to run Sundance Harvest because I feel like sometimes they're a bit like sassy and fun. And I don't like the idea of having any shareholders. So for both corporations, I'm the sole shareholder. So I am responsible and liable, but I also control what's happening and what we do. And I wrote the bylaws for both. So we basically don't have any pushback because if someone pushes back, I just say, don't buy our vegetables. And I say, go away. That's what I've been doing. I'm like, go away. The only pushback we have is when people are like, why are you prioritizing, Black and Indigenous people in your incubator. We should have everyone, all young farmers should join. I'm like, we'll go to the EFAO. There's so many workshops for young farmers there. There's no specialized workshops for people who want to grow culturally relevant crops. People like Eaton who wants to grow like corn that his like family has been growing for like centuries. There's no place for that. So basically, if someone asks me, I just say, we'll look over there, and I just walk away. You have a question?
Yeah, well, two.
Okay.
One, do you want to take a break soon? And second, do you like feed yourself with the food that you cook? What percentage of your diet is your own?
Yeah, so the one, do you want to take a break soon? Yeah. Well, I'm going out dancing on Saturday night. I usually go out dancing with my friends to a disco like once a week or something. So I do that. And then two is you feed yourself with the food. Well, like when I can afford to be honest, like the food that I grow is priced to reflect the living wage. It's not affordable, but again, the place I am in the food system, I will never be affordable. No matter what I do, unless I volunteer myself and I'm a serf, I can't provide potatoes the same price as no frills. There's no way. I don't have any subsidies to do large scale cash cropping. I don't have a really big John Deere tractor. I don't have migrant workers. I don't have any of these things that can make it affordable. So when, for example, watermelon season is in tow, I eat one watermelon a week. Maybe I want to eat 7, but I don't because it costs a lot of money. And then sometimes if I have energy, I do have a side garden. But to answer your question, I also fish. So I fish a lot. And 50%. In the wintertime, it's more like 80% because I eat a lot of squash.
Oh, about the break, I mean, like literally right now.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty good. I kind of having a lot of fun, so I don't want to stop that. But we can, how much time do we have?
You still have tons of time. Maybe we'll take a break in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be around, so you can chat with me and get a snack. But maybe one more question before a break, and then we can hang out. Yes, hello.
You mentioned Cuba. I went to Cuba and they made us eat yogurt with our cereal and my cousin who came from a dairy farm said, well, can I have a glass of milk? No, you can't. You can only have it with your coffee. Why is it so this milk problem?
I don't know, I'm not Cuban, but that sounds like a very interesting thing. Yeah, when I was in Cuba, I slaughtered my first chicken, so that was really fun because I didn't know what was happening, and they were speaking to me in Spanish. The people was with, they're saying, "Oh, speaking," and then the boy who was there, who was very cute, he was like, "We have to go outside." I was like, "Okay," and I went outside. And he's like, "You have to." He gave me the cleaver, and I was like, "What do you mean that the guests kill the chicken?" And I said, no, and I had to kill the chicken. So that's the only thing I came out of Cuba really my first week with is nothing about milk, but just about chickens. Maybe let's take a break and think about the chicken. I'm going to now answer online questions. So if anyone's curious about the online questions, you can listen. If you're not, that's okay. But online questions will commence. Oh, hello.
I want to give it to them. And I don't know if they're hearing the background noise, so that's why.
I can read it.
Okay.
Really whatever. I'm not. Yeah. So it's just the bottom half of the questions after the bolded part.
Okay, so hello everyone online. I'm going to now answer the online questions. So could you go into detail about your relationship with land and how you navigate those farmers who come from money and thus feel entitled to land is an online question. So my answer to this is, wow, that's my answer. Kidding, that's not my question, that's my answer. My answer to this is my relationship with land is difficult. Some of you may know from articles or such that on my father's side, they were they were from a sugarcane plantation in Jamaica. So that was a bit difficult when I found that out. And I was like, oh, I can't farm. I feel a bit weird. But then I thought about it. I was like, this is the most liberating thing I could think about from that bloodline. It's like, I'm farming now by choice. And I'm making a cool thing. And that's really fun. So that's something I like a lot about it. And then, navigating the relationship with those who come from money and feel entitled to land. They're in a different world than me, but I still have to talk to them. And I still have to discuss with them to try to get them to see a way that's not extractive. I was talking to my friend Chris Newman, who's also mentoring me on my chickens, the Bok Boks. And so also in my newsletter, if you want to buy like eggs, we call them Bok Bok gifts or Bok Bok eggs. We don't call them chicken eggs. But regardless, to go more on a serious note, he talked to me about, he's Piscataway, and they spoke about, trading, and there's always been like ways of like making an earning, pre-colonization, people still bartered, people still had like quote unquote jobs, things to do for the community. But the one thing he said that it's not right to put a price on, things that human needs to survive, like things that come from the earth, right? You can make, something like a warm jacket, for example, he said, and you can sell that, but do you need that? And it doesn't come from the earth. And I don't think you can put a price on something that comes from the earth. And I believe the same for like minerals and logging and pipelines and all these stuff. I don't believe you should extract and make wealth from that. So with that being said, the perspective of maybe some cash croppers who are like, I'm entitled to this 2,000 acres in Saskatchewan. I come up with that. I deal with that a lot in the National Farmers Union, because a lot of the farmers in the National Farmers Union across Canada are actually much older than me. And like, what are you doing with those tooth gems and the barrettes in your hair? This is not cash cropping. And I'm like, it's not. So what I try to do is say, well, what do I have in common with them? And then understand my relation and the barriers that I don't face compared to someone else, right? Like, I'm not from this land, so I think I should do the best I can to be as respectful, but also like share the wants and desires and the actual needs of those, which is why, Aiden really helps me understand, because he is, and I can understand like what he views as rematriation and what needs to happen. So, being that buffer between, old cash croppers who are like, you're not farming. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm farming. And people like Aiden who are like, they're extracting from the land and the mother. I can say, okay, I'm going to be the person who's kind of like the tether of like communication and trying to like get them to understand that, sometimes cash croppers are like, people who are entitled to land, again, thousands and thousands of acres, John Deere tractors, they feel really mad. And I think a common thing they need to understand, they feel mad at the 1%, the people who are extracting the land and taking from the land. And they've, it's really hard to understand their perspective, but I try my best, and I don't really have a solid answer. What I don't know, and I won't know it until I know it. So that's what I have to say. What made you jump from individual product to organization / business? How did you scale up from an individual to business? I started as a sole proprietor, and then I was like, I hate this because my money is the same as my Sundance money, and I couldn't get any of that, which way or what. So basically, I did the jump within a week of starting Sundance Harvest. You just go online, you go sole proprietor, or you go incorporate your business, and then you do it. It's pretty simple to get a business license. It wasn't difficult for me, and I don't understand many things online. The other question is, as someone who is, that's so sweet. As someone who's such an inspiration to others, who are you inspired or motivated by? TBH, when I started, not really anyone. I was pretty, how do I say this? I was very stubborn, and I thought I knew everything in the world, because I was like, this is fun, I can't fail. And then I failed a bit, and then I got really humble. So I mainly get inspired by my friend Chris Newman. Aside from that is my workers and the people who, even the hardest times in my personal life last year, still stood by me and said, we're going to work here. And now I can see like they really care about the vision. So the people who stick by me and who know me in a very deep way, working with me, being with me, and then we end up having a beautiful friendship. I'm really happy to say that with my workers. Hopefully they feel the same about me. I think so. What does success look like for Sundance Commons? So Sundance Commons, again, is a nonprofit. It's a registered nonprofit, and what it aims to provide is education and also to keep land in the modal of a community land trust, which is not in Canada. It's in America. In Canada, we have land conservation easements, which is totally different. It's not at all agriculture related in terms of being able to farm, being able to have a living. So the idea of Sundance Commons is once the community land trust designation happens, because again, the petition at the House of Commons went in, pretty stoked about my pushing for that. Someone from BC, a constituent, wrote that, pushed it. If that happens, basically, I want Sundance Commons to be a nonprofit, but also to receive land donations, and then write those tax receipts for the land donations, similar to like a conservation easement does. And then from that point, the land can be held for 99 years under Sundance Commons, and then we provide ground leases. So like a lease, but it won't be like all my besties who are leaving farming because some horse farm in Caledon says, we don't want to lease to you next year. And they started up an entire market farm with a hoop house. Like, that's not fair for young farmers. So the idea is for 99 years, they would have a lease with proper clauses, obviously, similar to what the agrarian trust does in America. But young farmers can have a lease for 99 years, be able to build infrastructure, be able to have freedom to actually grow and survive in agriculture and not have to pay an arm and a leg and be in a community. So that literally what I said is not stars and butterflies. It actually happens right now. Please look up the agrarian trust or the agrarian commons. It happened all across America, and I was hanging out with some cool cats from it like a month ago. Other question is, what challenges exist in building community? And additionally, what do you love about engaging youth and eaters? The challenges are interpersonal. I can be a difficult cookie sometimes, mainly because I've had a lot of problems in my life, but the key thing is to understand that not everyone works well with each other. I have to take a step back sometimes and say, okay, Cheyenne, this is a personal problem you're having with yourself. This is not a them problem. And the key thing, the challenges is like literally building community, you're making friends. You can't be friends with everyone, but you can try. And something that was really interesting, I listened to a podcast. It was on Hidden Brain by NPR recently, and I was driving. I don't like NPR that much, but I was listening to it. And it was about this like experiment at this like nun college. I think that's what they're called, right? Nun colleges in like the 70s or 60s. And there's this thing where you cannot have a best friend. If they saw you making a best friend, they said you have to talk to everyone. So then you had to be partnered with the person that they saw you talk to the least for like a week. So imagine that, being put together with someone in a group who you don't really talk to at all. And then by the end of it, they formed humanity with that person and said, hey, I actually have something in common with them. So I think listening to the podcast is like, wow, I should really do that for myself. So building community with me is kind of hard because I'm still growing up. I'm still becoming a woman, seeing what I like in life. But I need to learn to mesh with those who maybe I don't initially see eye to eye with, and maybe I don't get along with, like as a bestie, I want to go dancing, but as a human and as a person. So that's kind of the hardest, the challenges is the interpersonal challenge, because everything I do is so interpersonal. It's so lateral, except for like the business part, which is like all my mess that I have to deal with. Additionally, I love youth because oftentimes they don't care. We're all stardust. I literally was watching a documentary last night, and it was like, we are lizards and we came up from the water, and then we were like all these different creatures, and eventually the dinosaurs, and then boom. It was like, that was like thousands of years ago. Like, that's so crazy to me. So I like youth because like they're so quick sometimes of like, if it fails, who cares? And I think that's really fun. I remember I started Sundance Hard, was like, this is 100% going to fail in 6 months. It didn't. And I'm still like, it's going to fail in 6 months. Maybe it will. If it does, it's something really, really cool. And I think a lot of youth at Sundance Harvest are like, try anything you want, because who cares? You're stardust. Worst that can happen, I have a great story. And double worst that can happen, I go bankrupt. But I won't go bankrupt before that. I have a great story before, and I'll cut that part out. So I'll stop myself before that. My last question, it looks like, how can organizations provide genuine opportunities for youth that are more than youth councils whose voices are not respected or responded to? They need power. They need complete power. Funny story. Oh, this is such a good story. The National Farmers Union, they had a women and youth caucus since the 60s. Nothing for Black people, nothing for Indigenous people, nothing for people of color. Caucuses in the National Farmers Union, because it's a nonprofit and a union, have power. They get funding, they get making decisions, they get votes on the board nationally. They can vote. We put money in this. We lobby for this. We put out this thing at Parliament for this. If you're an advisory committee or council, you don't have power. And I was like, I don't like this. Oh, and I opened my little mouth, my big mouth actually. And then I was like, we need a caucus for farmers of color. This is so silly. And then some people were like, no, we don't need a caucus. They're going to take more money in the budget. I'm like, okay, Monopoly man, we make more money. And then I was like, no, we can't just have a women and youth caucus, because so many Black farmers were scaling up, buying these cool tractors. And I was like, And they're like, I don't know what unions to join. I'm like, we should join the National Farmers Union. So then I said, I want a caucus, and I want the caucus to get money and have voting on the national level, because on the national level, there's the president, the vice president, the operation policy, and then the presidents of the caucuses. And they, like me now, make decisions We need this to happen. We need that to happen. Money needs to go here. At convention, we need to talk about this. I want this policy done. And I wrote the amendments and I was like, oh, fight. And I got it. And I'm the president. So y'all need power. And to get power, you need to say, well, who makes the decisions? I'm going to be there, like lateral. So now as the president, I get to say so many things. I get to say, I want a tractor training workshop for all my members of my caucus, and they should learn how to fix a tractor. That's never happened before. I said, I want X, Y, and Z at the convention. I want to have a shuttle bus from the convention this year in Ottawa, go to Parliament Hill, where we talk to people within Parliament, and we say, this is what we want, blah, 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 blah. It's happening. And it's because I have a caucus, and that caucus has powers. Councils oftentimes do not have powers. You need to be on the board and have a vote. That's the key thing. Any questions from the audience? Because I don't see any more questions online. If you don't have any questions or you're very shy, it's okay. I'm going to be walking around after, but it looks like we're done. Thank you for staying.